俺ですよ。俺。
Stop right there, dude. I've read about the Ore scams, and not even this jerk deserves to have what remains of his bank account taken by you. Continuing right from where we left off last week, the Crab Granute had managed to capture Honto after defeating him, and Shoma was too weak to save him. Now you see, this is why that wannabe gangster dude told you that you have to eat your vegetables too. With his partner captured, our main rider tried to find consultation with his Grunkle Dente, and as far as cheering him up went, he did a good job as he assured him that it was an honest mistake, and he also didn't know how truly addictive the dark treats were. However, then the subject again came up on whether or not he should reveal his Granute heritage to his partner and ally, and yet of course this Grunkle told him to keep his secrets. I would expect no less from you, Rick Sanchez. Meanwhile, the Stomachs were gushing over their newest part-timer in Longe 9, who could provide them with their artificially flavored happiness-spiced humans. Thus, they were considering giving him a promotion, which of course he wanted, though not so much for the dark treats as he just threw them to the side. Yeah, as it turned out, he was faking being addicted to them and just wanted to get in closer with Stomach Inc. This was one of the more interesting twists, as now a new player has entered into the chat. Whether he's working by himself or for some third party, this Dark Kirame Silver is going to end up adding a lot of intrigue to the show. And it's only going to get more interesting with another twist that we'll discuss later in this video. In the meantime, Honto had managed to rather easily get out of his bindings. Yeah, I guess it figures that Mr. Krabs' nephew would suck at tying knots.
I don't wear shoes.
However, before he could escape, the Grand Newt walked in with Jeep, who of course wanted to exact his revenge for his sister, but he didn't want to do it with Honto. And this made sense, as he never directly fought them, as he was usually busy with something else. And even if he did something to mess up their plans, it was always indirectly with them barely even realizing he was there. Funnily enough, the Crab Grand Newt mistook Honto as Shoma's brother, which that could never be the case, right? Well, either way, his actual brother just left to further sulk. This gave Honto the idea to just stick around and get more intel about the Stomach family, which ended up making things a little tense as we the audience knew that the writer might end up opening the Pandora's box that was Shoma's dirty little secret. Back with Shoma, he was having lunch with Sachika, who continued to act as his wise sage gal girl, which is probably going to be the only role she'll be playing, at least for the foreseeable future, but again, more on that later. But yeah, of course, they again brought up the gift of Magi and its concept of crisscross feelings, which was pretty much the relationship between these writers, at least at this point. Back with said other writer, the Crab Granute had called in one of Longo's agents this time to try and sell him off. This caught Honto's attention, as he wanted to go to the world of the Grand Newt, both to learn more about his enemy, as well as to see how truly trippy that world was. Thus, kind of cleverly, he pretended like he was going to sell out Shoma by revealing his weaknesses, which is intel that the Stomachs could really use. Hey Longo, I think this agent is kind of defective. Fortunately, this exchange did result in the Yulaw Gochizo finding an opening to escape and lead Shoma to the hideout. And I guess great writers think alike, as Shoma also decided to play dead in order to be taken to Honto. With that, he managed to make his way to rescue him, only to learn that he had already untied himself, and how he was getting dangerously close to learning too much about his family. Though, kind of ironically, he was doing it all to help Shoma to be able to fight the Grand Newt without feeling any guilt about killing monsters. So yeah, this was kind of meant to be his gift of Magi, something that he did put a lot of thought into, but was also probably the last thing Shoma needed, considering that he was half monster himself. Still, at least it meant they were connecting emotionally, and maybe this would be a good time to come out and just tell the truth already and...
Nope.
Yeah, I'll admit, they're kind of stretching this plot point out, but again, we'll talk more about that in just a bit. For now though, it was finally time for the writers to serve up some crab cakes. And their fight with this multi-week monster of the week was pretty fun, as they used some pretty clever tactics to throw him off his game, and also debut a new form for Honto when he finally used the U-Log and Yeah.
This is a crime against fashion!
Like, I get that it's supposed to be a chocolate Yule log, but that doesn't mean they have to keep most of the elements from Valen's base form, which kind of clash with the Yule log's aesthetic. Like, compared to Shoma, who completely changed up his base costume, and yeah, it's a marked downgrade. Still, at least statistically, it was a strong mighty glacier that easily cracked through the crab shell. With that, the two finally finished off Sasori Orange's 20-year tenure with the Stoma Company. Later, at a Christmas party, Hanto, of course, was starting to pick up on Shoma trying to hide things from him by how much he didn't want him to learn more about the Granutes. Yeah, just as I said, they were kinda stretching this plot point out, it was now clear that things were starting to reach their breaking point, which I am really looking forward to seeing. That, and something that Neville had been concocting throughout the episode, which of course was the driver for the third rider of the series, and the episode ended with the reveal that its user was going to be Lage 9. Oh, and also... Yeah, okay, so before we get into the more spoilery stuff, let's actually talk about this episode, which was actually a pretty solid little Christmas episode, and good take on the Gift of Magi. I actually appreciated that we got a holiday episode where nothing truly awful happened, as it's both a better fit for the season, and also acted as a nice calm before the storm. We may be ending this year with the riders on good terms, but you do have to wonder how long that's going to last. As is often the case with many Toei shows, it's kind of a flip of the coin as to whether or not their shows are going to have wholesome Christmas episodes that'll leave the viewers feeling good for the holidays, or leave them with shock twists that'll leave them on edge. Especially as they usually have the next week off for New Year's, which is going to be the case for next week this year. Thus, kind of thankfully, this episode landed on heads, and we got a mostly positive Christmas episode, with the riders managing to connect through their mutual goals and forming deeper bonds as a result. That said, when Hanto's gift was one that actually encouraged more violence, and Shoma is still holding on to his gift of the truth, there is an underlying feeling of dread in spite of all of the wholesomeness, which is actually kind of gripping. Good times can't last forever between these two, especially as their conflict is becoming more complicated with wildcards like Lage 9 and that new driver. There's a lot coming up, and this episode overall did a great job at planting all of the necessary seeds, whilst also remaining a mostly wholesome Christmas episode with some pretty fun moments, mostly thanks to the final bow out by the Crab Granute. With all that said though, let's actually talk a little bit about future stuff, and if you don't want to be spoiled, feel free to close out this video, or just skip a chapter ahead. With that though, and as we said, Lage 9 is going to be the pudding rider known as Vlam. So, yeah, I guess color be surprised that Sachika isn't going to be the third rider, which I guess makes sense, as I remind you, Lage, and by extension Vlam's suit actor, is going to be Eitoku, the most vetted suit actor of this cast, so of course they would want him to play some sort of rider in this show. Plus, and as unfortunate as it is to say, like a male Precure, Toei doesn't push female riders as much as the guys. It's why both Cure Wig and Kamen Rider Jean's merch have been sold in limited quantities on Premium Bandai. Thus, they would want Vlam to be a guy, and a recognizable one at that, as he's already played a Sentai. Now, that's not to say that Sachika will never become Vlam. I mean, call it coping, but there have been plenty of examples of drivers switching hands with this franchise. Kamen Rider Faiz is easily the biggest perpetrator of this, as all of the gears in that show switch users at some point. In particular, Kamen Rider Delta, the third rider of that show. See where I'm going here? Thus, and while it seems to have been confirmed that Lage is going to be in the show for a good while, we also can't forget that Suga still has that extra Granute organ, so the possibility is still there. Also, looking at the rest of this poster for the next core of the series, we see that Hanto now has a bittersweet chocolate form, and Shoma, or maybe even a fourth rider, will get a spicy Gamigotsuzo. Whatever the case, it does seem like Hanto's rage and bitter feelings will finally consume him, perhaps after he finds out the truth about Shoma. And eventually, it seems like there's going to be a throwdown between all of the riders. Needless to say, the next part of the series, when we come back in January, is looking extra sweet. Thank you for watching, and you know, if you need any last minute gifts, these videos are free to watch, just saying. Nah, of course, don't force yourself to watch anything, and just enjoy the holidays, maybe with some cake, chicken, or whatever you like to celebrate with. Just as long as you do it with some loved ones by your side, it should be all good. Look forward to, well, a whole new year of content, and until then though, farewell for now, my friends, happy holidays, and yeah, next time I think I'm just gonna try and make my own Swiss roll. I mean, just look at this thing, it's store-bought, and it actually tastes like an actual sponge.